Alright, so this will be a quick one. It's been a while. And right now I'm in Ida, as you can see, obviously. What else would I be doing at this beautiful Saturday night? And what I have here, hopefully you can see it. What I have here on the right side is the old version of Gold Source engine. And on the left side there is the new version, or the Steam Legacy version. 8684, and this is build 1792. So 1792 build from 2001, this from 2019, I believe. So you might be asking, what am I doing? Well, the answer is simple. We have set out together with my colleague to reverse this version of the game. And by the way, this isn't anything new. I don't know if we will publish it, but it contains some pretty interesting code. But what I wanted to say is that this isn't something new. Actually, a few months ago, my colleague with other guys have reversed the 722 build, I believe, which is even older than this one. They have published it on GitHub, and it was taken down like a day after they published it. Basically, it had a DMCA takedown, so that was quite funny. So I don't know if we will publish this version, but yeah, you haven't seen this one, whatever. Maybe we can talk about the differences, what is different here. So one important thing that we have noticed is that this build from 2001, Valve seemed to be very much interested in anti-cheat. And let me show you. So this is a host_frame function. This function can be found also in the Quake sources, Quake 1 sources, and this function is basically the function that gets called every frame, right? Obviously. By the way, this on the left side is my version from the new version of the game, reversed like an IDA, obviously. So as you can see, there are already some differences. Notably, these two functions. And what do they do is really funny. I will not show this in video, but basically you can imagine that this first function, when this boolean is set, this is a global variable, when this boolean is set, your crosshair goes up and you start spinning. Okay, so you start spinning and your crosshair goes up. And the second function, this one, basically when this boolean is set, again global variable in the program, actually initialized, when this is set, you start to shoot. So this was to prevent cheaters to actually cheat in game, but the detection method is quite hilarious. I'll show you in a second. So let me open up the second binary, which is again from the old version, but this is the hl.exe file. Okay, now let me just go briefly through what happens when you enter a console command in Gold Source Engine. So TLDR, this function gets called. It's called cbuff because it's a buffer C. Not sure. It basically adds a buffer to the frame local command storage, let's say. So when you execute a bunch of commands in one frame in Gold Source Engine, they get all queued up in this buffer, and then they get executed on either on the client next frame, or they get sent to the server to be executed on the server. For example, if SV cheats are enabled, some of the examples of commands that get executed on the server are, I believe, God, kill, and so on. Maybe aircon, and so on. You get the idea. And maybe we can see them side by side in the new version. Oh yeah, let me show up the new version. So this obviously is how the function should look like. It only do some checks if there is no overflow, and if not, it adds it to the buffer, which is just a, I believe, a global variable. Yeah, this cmd underscore text, which is, by the way, this, I think, which I haven't defined yet. Yeah. So this just adds it to the buffer. But as you can see, there are some weird checks to some strings which appear to be encrypted. And if you look closely here at the, again, hl.exe, you can see the strings actually here. 8hy, 769d, 769d. So the engine, or not the engine, well, basically the launcher, which is quite bigger in this version than compared to the new version of the game, is doing something that is telling the engine, it's calling the function with the argument that is then checked here in the engine. Okay, so the way this works is that engine exposes API for commands to the launcher, and launcher uses this API through like a C interface, basically, which is this, the engine API. Okay, there are a bunch of functions that the engine exposes to launcher for whatever reason in this version of the game. And quite a funny thing is that these strings actually are encrypted here. I haven't yet, or we haven't yet deduced what are these strings, which I'm not sure what the fuck that is. If it is like some kind of compile time XOR or encryption or compression, that's anybody's guess, because they aren't decrypted actually anywhere. So maybe just to obfuscate it, so that you don't find it in memory. Actually, this is really primitive stuff. Okay, it's like, okay, you can argue that this is pretty old version of the game, like from 2001, but actually, this is I don't want to say childish, but it's really stupid. So the way this works is that this is a callback function to enum child windows, and I will just quickly open up this API so that we can see it, what it does. So it enumerates the child windows that belong to the specified parent window. So apparently Valve thought, or have tested, I don't know, or there were some programs that were altering the game window in this version, or some cheats or something, and they were creating basically child windows of the parent window, which was hl.exe. So this function can enumerate these windows with this callback, and this, by the way, happens every 1.77421 blah 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 seconds, which is again odd number. I don't know if this is something like an inverse root of something, like 1 over something, or something like that, or a square root of something. I'm not sure. That may be just it. Yeah. So this function is called every almost 2 seconds, and it finds a window by string, so by name. And we have actually decompiled these names, or decrypted, and I will just show you what are the strings. So 1 second. So I have actually, okay, I have used ChatGPT for this. Okay, I was lazy. I could just spin up a debugger and just see what is the value of this string, but whatever. But as you can see, these strings basically map to these values. Okay. So there is scan range pixels, stop, team, stop, disable, auto shoot. Which is like, I was like, what the fuck is this, right? But yeah, that's what they are. This is the function that decrypts it. It's some simple XOR and some value shifting and so on. This is the XOR table. So very primitive stuff. Valve is known for their encryption, that it's pretty weak. They have used, or at least at this day and age, they have used in the blob files that I have made the decryptor for, they have used a simple XOR for encrypting the whole file, binary file, so that you don't open up it in a disassembler like IDA, but I have written a decompiler for that. But again, this is very simple encryption. Like XOR is something, there is nothing simpler than you can do than XOR, right? You can, I don't know, you can do similar things, but XOR is really simple. So they have just used this encryption to basically find windows with this text. So these names, so scan range pixels. And I was actually looking up some cheats from this era, cs1.6 cheats actually, and to my best knowledge, and I have seen quite old cheats, but to my best knowledge, I don't know any cheat that would create like child windows on the game window. All cheats create in-game UI, like HUD, or they utilize the command panel on the left side in cs1.6, but nobody have actually created child windows. So I find this really strange. Maybe there was some cheat that did this. I'm not sure. Haven't found any or haven't seen anything like that. But yeah, so that's the encryption of the strings. They are decrypted and they are used. And if some of the windows are found, there is like some specific Boolean logic. But if any of these windows are found, basically this punishment is enabled, where you start shooting and you start spinning around, basically with your crosshair up. I don't know what's that about, but yeah. So that's one weird thing. Obviously, there are a lot of other things that are different in this build. I won't go over all of them, but another thing is this one. So, to my current understanding, and again, this is the host frame function, which is called every frame, and excuse me. To my current understanding, this is a piece of code that checks. So it gets the current module. It iterates over like pages in this module, I guess, and it queries for the page like flags, let's say, and it does a cross product there. I'm not sure. I haven't actually reversed this code yet, but again, you can see some kind of other anti-cheat mechanism, which, as you can imagine, in 2001 we didn't. Well, there was IDA, but very limited. I'm not even sure if they had like GUI support of IDA. I know that there was a DOS version, but you know, obviously, a normal person wouldn't have access to IDA. Obviously, you wouldn't need it. Now it's much easier to get, but. Yeah, so this right here was some mitigation over cheaters. So this is for glbegin, common function that was hooked. This function is hooked by almost every cheat in cs1.6. And another function, add entity. So this function, I believe, was used to do several things. All I can think of right now is backtrack. Obviously, this wasn't at the time developed even, but you know, to spawn entities, basically, another player's guns, boxes, or whatever. And same code or similar code right here. Yeah, there's counting some exports or whatever. Really, really weird stuff. Here is doing some vector arithmetic. Not sure, again, not sure what this is all about yet. but we are going to see, hopefully. Yeah, this is obviously the filter time function. But yeah, so really cool stuff. One other cool thing that isn't present in the new version, obviously to those people who don't know anything about Gold Sword, this will tell nothing, but there are these crypt functions and files which use the World Opponent Network code, which is actually used as an import, two imports, one auth and one crypt. Now this was, to my best understanding, used for multiplayer back in the day when Sierra owned Half-Life, and from my understanding, at this time, this basically Half-Life and cs1.6 was a big deal, as you can see, to Valve and to Sierra, because they were actively mitigating cheats. Now I cannot think of any other version of the game post 2005, circa, that had these mitigations. Now obviously these were later removed from the game, but again, it's really interesting to see, you know, these kinds of things in the actual source code. Now, I also, speaking of the mitigations, the cheat mitigations, for example, the plus attack or the spinning. I haven't seen that anywhere on the internet yet. I haven't looked much, but if you someone know or have noticed this behavior or in some kind of article or on the internet in general, please let me know. That would be interesting. Or any cheat, if you know any cheat that mitigated this or had specific checks for this version of the game, please let me know. But I know that there weren't any much cheats at the time for cs1.6, because, you know, there weren't a lot of technical people at the time even. Nowadays everybody is technical basically. So yeah. Yeah, so that's that. There are obviously a lot of more things to mention in this build. For example, this script API, which I've talked about, this was used for the multiplayer. I'm not sure if in this version or not, but obviously before 2000 it was actively used, I guess. So this is crypt API.cpp and crypt.cpp, I think, files. One thing to notice that I have noticed from my reverse engineering days, I can say, is that I have deduced the order of the functions in the binary corresponds to the original order in code. So, for example, at the top, there are functions that, if you can imagine a Visual Studio project, if you have a file that is on top, it will be on top if you compile this on MSVC. I believe if this works even in the latest versions of the MSVC compiler, these functions and files will be at the very top of the binary. So that means on the lowest address. Why is that? Well, because the files are ordered alphabetically, both in the final binary and in Visual Studio. So, based on that, you can deduce the order of the functions, for example, and the files. Based on this, you can actually also deduce the name of the files. So, if you have a file that you know was called like a.c, and then you have a file you know that was called b.c, and in between is some unknown code, then you know that it should start with a something, you know, or something like that. You get the idea. So you basically can deduce based on the code, based on strings, based on other information, the name of the actual original file, or at least try to. I've done this with several files, for example the A3D code, which haven't been published anywhere. Some of the files are called, for example, cnd_ad a3d.cpp or something like that. And I have deduced this purely on the fact that the files and the API is sorted alphabetically. Another thing is that in the binary first comes the actual files of the main project, which is, for example, in this case, the hw.dll. And then at the end, after the normal files end, there are statically linked libraries. So for example, the script API, as you can see by this little arrow, hopefully it can be seen, but this is the map of the file. And I can just move around, you know, there's some data, there are some initialized data, there are some constant data, I don't know, strings, whatever. But here to the end, you can see that there are some functions that don't actually live in the HW project itself. Okay, this is a statically linked library. You can also tell because there are a lot of like C runtime code. What I can show you here. Let me just find something real quick. Well, as you can see by these strings, you know, so Microsoft Visual C runtime or whatever, these are some string compare functions. So this is basically code that is statically linked. This is the libc, or I've actually forgotten how it's called on Windows. I think it's like CRT or something, or basically the C runtime. And yeah, so as you can see, this is obviously like some CRT code, basically. So yeah, and right here are the crypt functions, for example. So based on this, we can actually deduce that this was a statically linked project and not part of the actual file. Now, I'm not sure about the ordering of the statically linked files in the file if they are alphabetically sorted. I'm not sure, actually. There might be, but yeah, I'm not sure. That's something that I didn't ever needed to know. So yeah, well, a lot of interesting things, as you can see. Obviously, this build have a lot of more things to be discovered. There's a lot of bloat, like the renderer, the networking is similar. You know, the gameplay code is same, almost the same, and a lot of these things just need to be reversed all over again. The work gets tedious. It's a lot of work because there are literally tens of thousands of functions. But you know, we are reverse engineers, we are explorers, we love to do this stuff. It's basically our hobby to discover new things, even though it's a computer game, but yeah, it's basically interesting to us. Yeah, so it's like archaeology, but for Valve games. Totally normal, you know. Yeah, so yeah, what else would last thing I can show you? So let's see, what do we find here? Yeah, so this is regular code. I can even find it here, I think. Yeah, so this function hasn't been changed for like 10 years, as you can see. Or 20, I should say, almost. 2019 and 2001. But yeah, maybe we can search for secure. Nope, nothing secure. Have I wrote it? Okay. Or maybe svw underscore. Yeah. Yeah. So these are the commands, server-side commands. Maybe we can see something. Yeah, I'm not sure if these are even. I may be mistaken, but I'm not sure if these. Yeah. Okay. So these these are actually present in the newest version of the game as well. Yeah, but I remember there was a VP or downloading, or what was the string? Yeah, this I haven't actually think of this, but this function is actually funny because this function is a function that just sets a global variable, and it's used in texture loading code. So it has nothing to do with with downloading like contents from the internet, but it's rather meaning in like download this type of texture, which is like 4 by 4 by 4 channels of color or something like that, 4 times 4 or something, I don't know, or divisible by 4, something like that, texture size. And this was actually used back in the day when the engine had the 3D support, which was dropped in 2013 when the Linux port was happening. But yeah, this is actually the DirectX wrapper to OpenGL. So if you, or rather the contrary, the OpenGL wrapper to DirectX, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I think this is it. I think that the most interesting thing was the host frame stuff, how they have tried to basically prevent cheaters from cheating in the game, which is not the best way of doing it. It's not something, I don't know, Vanguard would do, but you know, at the time it may worked because, as I said, there weren't a lot of cheat developers, so it may just worked. And yeah, interesting history.